There was a video by Professor DM that I think I took to heart a lot more than I was really going to be ready for, because this was a thing I had fought with for a hot second, right? I think armor class is going to wind up going the way of the dinosaur. I think that armor class is probably kind of likely to start getting phased out of TTRPGs, other than D&D clones. The reason being, armor class calculation, number one, it's like, it feels like it always comes down to some kind of an arbitration that happens here. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense that something like, if you roll to hit something, and then whenever it hits, or it's like a confirmed miss, or it like bounces off of the thing, and that's left up to narrative to determine what that is or isn't, right? In this system, that isn't really super great. What I would much rather have, let me just say it like this. I think that armor class, if I'm having to look at too much at a stat block, right? If I'm looking at moments in which I think things slow down, the number one time I feel like shit slows down happens all during an attack, right? You roll a d20, confirm something happens, look at this number over here, add these two things together, and then I look over here, I roll dice to determine how much this is and add this modifier in over here to confirm I did 3 damage. There's so much time in there that we can cut down, right? Now, if Vagabond is meant to be super, super fast, the way I'm currently thinking about doing that is calculating attack tests, or whenever you're making an attack, right? An attack test is no longer going to be roll a d20 and add a modifier. It will be, let's add a modifier and your aptitude in, similar to how we were calculating skill tests. So this would mean that all weapons would be to hit is rolling over what is on your character sheet. How good are you with axes? That good, right? How hard is it for you to hit? Apparently not super hard, like, you know what I mean? Now, if you have a lower aptitude and you're not investing in the might, and you're a wizard that just picked up an axe, boy, it's going to be real hard for you to hit with that thing. We don't even need to factor in anything like people that don't have aptitude are hindered whenever they're making these attack tests or anything like that. We're making the math a lot more solid here, to where like it is on the character to know whether or not, like, I think we're going to see a lot less, I'ma just try and see if I hit, and that winding up being the ridiculous like nat 20 moment in which like they defy reality. If people want to play with that, it's all good, but that doesn't really work all that well in terms of a system that is intended to run itself. So we need to be able to have the TTRPG keep its own integrity here. And this is part of it. We need to make sure that the monsters don't get all the piss taken out of them. And part of what can make them scarier is to make sure that their offenses, the players have to prove that. It's not something that you can just build into and essentially guarantee this is always going to keep happening. You feel that as if taking attack tests away is removing more from the GM agency and creating monsters, but that's just my initial impressions. They grow to understand it more. I am not of the opinion that a GM should be making monsters for the thought of they need to win. If the GM or whoever is thinking, I've given all these goblins a personality, a name, and I have grown very attached to them. This one has a full-time job and a sick kid at home, and is named Steven. What do you mean the players killed him in like 2 hit? You know, don't get invested in your monsters like that. There's definitely getting invested into like NPCs or whatever, but like if you're throwing something up against the heroes, it should be understood like in this system, they're intended to kill it. Like that's the thing. So there's an aspect to role playing as of late that I at least with fantasy TTRPGs, that Vagabond is gonna push back against really hardcore. I want to bust down the door and kick fucking modern TTRPGs in the dick and be like, hey, you know what we're doing? We're combat. It's combat. We got combat over here. We're focused on combat. We know what the fuck we're about. Combat and exploration. Boom. Vagabond doesn't gamify social interactions. You roleplay that shit out if you want it to. Boom. That shit's always going to be flexible. It is always going to be flexible for what happens at the table. This is handled by roleplay at your table. This is a system built around quick combat and engaging exploration. You have tools at your disposal to think of alternatives to violence, but don't be shied away from stabbing the bad guy with the pointy end. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, no, for sure, Ked, right? Like, this is me trying to pull back everything that the GM has to handle. If you're a GM that likes to micromanage every tiny aspect of the game, maybe Vagabond may not totally be for you, but I swear Beer and Pretzels guys are going to be a lot bigger fans of this. This will be able to tell epic level campaigns and do whatever, but I'm promising you, I'm doing the work to try and make the GM's work 10 times easier. What is the excitement that a GM is intended to get out of running a monster? Let me hear it. What is their... Are they supposed to be excited about the fact that this monster is rolling very well? Are they supposed to be stoked at the idea that... Like, the more and more I keep thinking about what is exciting about running a monster for a GM, the less and less I think that it's focused around this thing needs to be engaging during combat. Like, this thing needs to be... It's the rolls around the D20s for this monster and its agency that makes it really fun to run as a DM. You're confused. Do enemies roll dodge defense tests to avoid being hit by players? No. Nope. Players are assumed to hit. No, sorry, not assumed to hit. Wow, sorry. Hang on, let me backtrack on that. No, it's handled by an attack test, which is set like this. You know the way that skill tests are handled, right? If you remember the way that skill tests are handled, where it's 18 minus your capability, this is going to be the way that weapon tests are handled, or like attack tests are handled. In some ways, like this is basically how good are you at hitting with the thing. If you're not a really strong dude swinging a big axe, then there's a chance that it's just not going to do a whole lot for you, you know? Trying systems like these had me freed as a GM. My live stream Cypher game is one of the most fun things you've ever run. And you've rolled a single dice. Yes. I want, if you are the arbiter, I want you to be able to use this engine that I built for fuel for creativity, rather than thinking that there's a million things you need to micromanage. You are facilitating the game, which means that if the only thing you have to do during combat is track its health, cool, awesome. It's going to run in and attack and do the thing. You're rolling D6s to, there's the damage. All right, whatever. Yeah, cool. There's so many things that we can do with this right now. 5e monsters are boring to run. Most things come down to the D20 rolls. You had much more fun when you need to design encounters to promote strategy. For instance, the enemies having their own roles and tactics. Yeah, like, my thought with this is you'll see how the units are supposed to play out, and that isn't telling you as an arbiter this is how you have to run it, but it's telling you this is how it's suggested to play out. For players, yeah, this is how it's going to run, because that's how the game is intended to be, you know, for solo play. So understand that it's going to come with that level of nuance, all right? There's multiple different ways that you can play this game. It can run solo, it can run co-op, and it can run guided, all right? We've already had this working. Like, it's working. It's, woo! You know, that's the crazy thing, right? Is it's like, we've seen the atomic bomb go off. Now, how are we going to apply this thing, you know? I guess I want to see how you represented an enemy being hard to hit, more hit points / protections. So yeah, more health or protections. So we have that, and we have ways that we can do things like, is it a boss? Cool. Well, this encounter needs to come with a progress clock. And at this point, here's what we can tell it's going to do if these are available at this point, and this point on the progress clock. Boom. Now you see what I meant by doing away with AC. Yep. Because I'm going to show this one off because this was honestly the thing that convinced me, okay? And it's a short video. This was what convinced me. It's time to get rid of this. This is an old hangover that we have been using as a crutch in design. A lot of people are terrified to move beyond this because I get it. It's kind of simple to understand and whatnot, but like I just don't really think that it's great for combat. It's really weird to me to think that like this thing that we have relied on and has been so central to combat, it's finally time to let it die, you know. Our characters still landing hits fairly often with this version. I mean, that all depends on their stat. With 18 minus their capability, I am going to estimate that if they're like adept with the thing and they've invested into that core stat as their main attribute, they likely need to roll a 12 or higher in order to hit the thing, right? You can get the bonus from the adept. And then I'm looking at the potential of thinking, if you roll over that modifier, not only does it do that, but it also increases the damage by the amount you rolled over. I'm not incredibly sure if I want to go with that route, because that's another calculation I think is going to wind up bogging down play. But I also know that sensation of thinking like, okay, well, I beat that, and that's cool. So part of what this does is we remove a calculation, okay? We remove a calculation and we kind of put it somewhere else. Because we're doing a calculation and putting it on your sheet before you do the dice roll, you are secretly always adding in those modifiers every time you roll that d20, right? So those modifiers are added in there. So the more and more you reduce this number, this could be the better you are at hitting with the thing and the more it hurts whenever you hit with it. Both tied into something that we can determine without another dice roll, without another calculation. Except for if it does additional damage if you roll over this number, right? That extra flat number that's in there, on top of a die. Well, I guess if you're getting it to a bonus to the attack test, then it's probably already kind of factored in there and we don't really need to do that. But, okay, anyways. If we're trying to find ways to remove calculations from numbers, that's kind of one of the ways I would see it happening right there. Now, let's talk about this one.
Deathbringer here. Subscribe so you never miss an upload.
Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor Dungeon Master, and this channel is about independent RPGs and homebrew D&D. This tweet comes from Meloria.
By the way, I love this fucking spite he's got, this silver tongue he's had here lately around rebranding in a sense. Fucking love his sense of humor, man.
Of Agramore, who is a comic book artist and artist for Castles and Crusade. She writes, gotta say, I love the OSE book for the layouts and organization, but in practice...
Sorry, let me do this real quick. Because, I mean, if you want the full video, yeah, go check it out. I know it's only 4 minutes, but I don't want to take up a whole lot of stream time because I got other stuff I need to move on to.
It was miserable. Combat would be a slap fight as everyone failed to land a hit for 30 minutes. I love old school essentials on my classic Maldve BX D&D, but this is a problem I have also encountered. Armor classes are just too high and ability score bonuses are too low, and that can lead to combats that drag. An OSE Goblin has an armor class of 14. That means an average character has only a 30% chance of hitting one on first level, a whopping 70% failure rate. That means 7 out of 10 rounds, no one's going to land a blow. Ability score bonuses are also lower. In OSE, a strength of 13 to 15 will yield a +1 bonus to hit, but Castles and Crusades uses the 5E ability score bonuses, which begin at 12 and yield a bonus as high as +4 for a strength of 18. You can hack an old school game by simply using 5E ability score bonuses. This will result in faster combats, but I still think AC 14 for a Goblin is too high. In my game, I only use 3 armor classes. 10 is for the minions, 15 is for the bosses, and 12 is for anything in between.
Okay, if you get this low, if you get this reductive here, and I'm literally just saying, you know, reductive in the sense of this is what we're taking armor class and turning it down to because it's too much of a headache to mess with, and it makes combat boring, then I think it's time to get rid of it. He sounds like Mandark when sped up. Wait a second, hang on. Let me try that. Hang on.
I'd rather give the monsters more hit points. I find it's more satisfying for the players if they hit more frequently. And D&D's designers have discovered that over the years. The most common 5E...
The answer is hydrogen. Please, sir, call me Mandark.
Armor class for monsters is 12, and most armor classes...
Shut up. All right.
5E are lower than previous editions. A BX Red Dragon has an armor class of 21, and a 5E Dragon armor class 19. But the BX Dragon has only 45 hit points, whereas the 5E Dragon has 250.
Okay, so do we see what happened here? In all the time that we've been thinking about using armor class in TTRPGs, we've suddenly felt like, oh yeah, this part of the game that we've like really been, clinging on to for a long time, that was a good idea early on. We have an early prototype. This feels like this achieves the thing of like, okay, it's making it more difficult to hit. It's not as if it's bad design. It's just that we have figured out over time it isn't really quality, Yeah, we've gone from making dragons to where it was like, oh, they're way harder to hit. And then heroes are just like, oh, well, we're just missing it with everything. This isn't super fun. But like it was kind of easy to kill, the 45 hit points. And now they've changed that to where it's like, it's way easier to hit the dragon, but we have to give it a fuckload of hit points in order to make up for it. So what they did is one of my least favorite parts of this, right? This is way less elegant because now there's more tracking. You see how they made this actually more difficult for the GM? The players might be hitting more, so that means the GM is going to be doing a lot more calculations. And they gave them this huge sack of hit points to deal with.
Most armor classes in 5e are lower than previous editions. A BX Red Dragon has an armor class of 21, and a 5e Dragon armor class 19. But the BX Dragon has only 45 hit points, whereas the 5e Dragon has 250 hit points.
They felt like in order to make the combat much more exciting, they're going to make it a lot easier for the players to hit, but the game master is now expected to be doing a lot more math. Okay? Now, and I get it. You know what? You all are probably very big brain people. I'm sure if this gets clipped for a bot or something like that, I'm sure you, viewer, watching right now, are a very big brain person. And subtraction, or as Travis William calls it, reverse math, is pretty easy. Okay? I get it. But that doesn't mean that it has to be difficult at all. If we can make it to where the game is easier to run, and if this is a point of critique for TTRPGs, then I think that there's a problem here that we could probably solve. Okay, so that's one of the things that I was aiming to do with Vagabond, right? We'll kind of watch. Well, I think that kind of hits the main point right there, but this is from Professor Dungeon Master. He also brings up an example of how the Hobgoblin, despite being a CR 1/2 creature, has an armor class of 18 because of armor and a shield. This feels like this is going to cause a hindrance on determining difficulty. So if we can start removing this factor here, then we start to see that, oh, okay, well, the defenses that determine its difficulty are like its hit points and maybe some other features. Does it hinder some saves or something like that? Oh, well, maybe it's just health. So it has a lot of health. And then, other than that, we're just looking at how much damage it's dealing per round. Oh, that's how we can determine its difficulty. Okay, cool. Armor class is this massive, lumpy ass thing that the only way we're going to be able to move forward in TTRPGs and innovate is to break traditions here. And I think that it's time for armor class as a whole concept to get the fuck out of the game. I am personally aiming for a system that is going to be quick and cool, and not quick in the sense of like, I'm going to give you a 2-page TTRPG here. No, I want to take the concept of a quick and cool combat system and turn it into something that has as much depth as something like a D&D or a Pathfinder or Dungeon World, Blades in the Dark, whatever, right? And thank you, Professor Dungeon Master, for giving me the push to finally get rid of this. This is why in Vagabond, armor class is not a thing. I am getting rid of it. I have been convinced now it is time to get rid of this. It should be completely up to your skill as to how well and how hard you hit the thing. I feel like I'm vastly underestimating the amount of games that already don't use AC. Oh no, I'm aware. I'm aware there are other games that don't. I'm just talking about why I personally am getting away from it, right? There are other TTRPGs I'm well aware of that don't use AC. Got one of them right here, right? Damage. Do I still do AC as damage reduction in Vagabond? I have protections. That are factored in right now that I'm still rolling with, you know. How would I determine if you do damage? there is a threshold that you have to roll over, similar to skill tests, in order to hit with a weapon. And what this means is we don't get rid of crit. Crit is still here. We still have all the cool stuff that we can do with the dice without getting rid of a lot of the fun shit. You know, like, yeah.